Welcome back. We're going to give it another shot. Will sexual and reproduction health rights remain a challenge, not just in Namibia, but the world at large? We're joined on the line now by Tuyeimo Haudila, who is a journalist and African Union Media Fellow, who is talking to us pertaining this documentary on sexual and reproductive rights. Tuyeimo, good evening, and thank you so much for being patient and joining us tonight.
Good evening, Nina. Thank you so much for having me.
Tuyeimo, to start with, what inspired the concept of this documentary that you've made? And talk to us about the central message that you're hoping to convey here.
To be honest, what really inspired me to look at it is the overlooked crisis of unsafe and limited sexual and reproductive health access amongst adolescents in Namibia and particularly in Africa as well. So the whole point was to bring stories, to humanize people's stories and to show policymakers the policy gaps, the cultural stigma, the healthcare barriers, and then the citizens themselves to say that when people speak about lack of comprehensive reproductive health systems, these are the results of that.
How do societal and cultural norms, Tuyeimo, influence public perceptions of sexual and reproductive health rights?
I would say that there's so much stigma around it, specifically in many African communities. It's deeply rooted cultural taboos and religious beliefs, and they make the open conversations about sex and reproductive health extremely difficult. And personally for myself, and I'm sure in many African homes, talking about sex, it's not even allowed. It's people whisper when they talk about it. Never mind contraception, never mind talking about getting an abortion, never mind talking about health risks which are involved into, especially when it comes to the vaginal system. You know, for men, I feel like men are allowed more to talk about it, but women, they are not allowed. People remain tied to tell women about their own bodies, their own sexual health, and how they can be in control of their own reproductive system.
Were there any particularly powerful or emotional stories that, stood out during the filming process?
Yeah, no, so many of them, Nina. And one, I would say, unforgettable story that comes to mind is one from a woman who later found out she was pregnant with twins. And I could tell as I was interviewing her, her pain, her silence, and ultimately her courage to actually agree to do the interview on camera. This made the issue heartbreakingly real. And she said that when she had decided to do the abortion, she had made a choice where she felt she didn't have any other choice. But later when she found out she was pregnant with twins, she wanted to reverse her decision because she said she would walk in the mall and she would see twin children and she would break down and cry. And years later, she's having this interview with me, and she said because she had gone through therapy, she believed she had healed or she was healing, but she broke down and we had to pause the interview because it was just so bad. Another one I would say also stick out for me was the stories from the healthcare workers. They mentioned there's a green stick that is particularly used in Katutura. They would say the location. Most of the patients who use it come from there. And this green stick is like a shrub that they insert into their vagina, and then it goes, because the womb doesn't like anything smelly, so then it forces it to open up. But the nurses are saying that it's very fatal. Most of these cases that come through the green stick, the woman either loses her womb or she loses her life.
In your view, Tuyeimo, how critical is education in advancing sexual and reproductive health? Of course, hearing stories like this, one would say it should be a top priority. And how is the lack of this education, reflected in the documentary?
Education, we've reflected it so well in the sense that I believe education is prevention, right? If we can get to make people understand. And education in the sense that we still have people who are educated, not necessarily that you've gone to UNAM or you have a PhD or you have a master's. Education in the sense that you understand the issue and you are able to comprehend and then explain it to the next person or even for yourself. If I've done I would say a short research amongst my friends and women who are close to me, and I would just pose a random question and ask, are you using family planning? Majority of them would say no. Are you sexually active? Yes. Are you having sex? Yes. Do you want children? No. So how are you engaging in unprotected sex, but you don't want to get pregnant? So it's another thing to understand, but it's actually to do it and then to implement what you're doing. So the documentary shows that comprehensive sexuality education empowers adolescents with acknowledging and helping them make safe decisions. Because they're older women, perhaps they can then navigate life, if they find themselves pregnant, even though they didn't want it, they might be able to navigate life. But teenagers, it will change their lives in a way that you cannot imagine it. And that cycle of poverty, especially the ones in rural areas, that is where the greater care and access needs to be given.
What kind of long-term impact do you hope that this documentary will have on public dialogue and, policy making?
I hope it becomes a tool for education, advocacy, and change. And I hope it will be used by activists, educators, policy makers. I also want the Ministry of Education to have, life skills subject in schools, right? So I want them to also have this comprehensive sexual reproductive subjects in school where they can be able to talk to the teenagers from a very young age, because what we want them to do is to delay sexual activities, because we know that they are going to have the sex, but can they delay engaging in those sexual activities? And also, if it moves even one government to review, especially in Southern Africa and on the African continent as well, to review their harmful laws or get inspired to look at how they can improve access to comprehensive sexual reproduction and then eventually allow for abortion to take place in their country for a better and a safer, because they think denying or saying that it's illegal, it's not taking place. It's taking place. It's just taking place in unsafe ways.
Share with us the official release dates, Tuyeimo, and any upcoming screenings or events related to the documentary that's going to be taking place.
Yes, it premieres on Africa Day on May 25 on NTV Africa. That will be at 1600 hours, 16:30. And the timing, we've decided it's intentional because we wanted it to align with a day that celebrates Africa's future, which is the youth. Majority of the population in Africa is the youth. And it will also be airing on One Africa TV. That will be on the 9th of June.
Just lastly and very briefly, what closing thoughts would you like to leave with our audience concerning this documentary?
I love that. I want them to know that this is not just a documentary, even though we keep saying documentary. It's not just a documentary, it's a call to action. And I want everyone who is watching and listening to us right now to take it upon themselves as a responsibility. Start conversations in your own home. Have sexual reproductive rights conversations. I want the government to stop running out of contraceptions in their hospitals, because just because they are running out of contraceptives, it doesn't mean women are going to stop having sex and men are going to stop having sex. People are going to continue having sex, and then there will be consequences after that. And Africa cannot afford to lose another generation to silence, stigma, and neglect, because to be honest, we can do it. We just need to have honest conversations, policy change, and compassionate action.
Tuyeimo, keep up the good work. It was lovely speaking to you this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Nina. Have a great evening ahead.
That was Tuyeimo Haudila, a journalist speaking to us this evening on this documentary that she's directed and produced pertaining to sexual and reproductive rights. Well, as she says, it's not a documentary, it's a call to action. It officially releases on May 25th. That's next week, Monday. On that note, we wrap up today's edition of the Daily Roundup. Of course, we're back tomorrow, same time and place. For myself and the team is good night. Thank you for watching.